Warning! Kinda Murdery contains adult themes, explicit language, and descriptions of violence. It is not suitable for anyone, and we recommend you stop listening now.
California's rugged and scenic northwestern corner is the beginning of the great Pacific Northwest. A region of untamed and primitive beauty.
And the Humboldt County Sheriff's Department has now joined efforts with the Arcata Police.
Growers living off the grid. Humboldt County also has the highest rate of missing person cases in the state. Where 60% of marijuana is grown.
There's a lot of evil here. A lot of evil.
This is Kinda Murdery, and you're entering the Emerald Triangle. Wow, that was nuts. Hey everybody, welcome to Kinda Murdery. I'm your host, Zevon Odelberg. Thank you for choosing to spend your time with me. As always, I'd like to remind you that I have cerebral palsy, and it's my hope that Kinda Murdery can become a support system for people with disabilities. If you or someone you know has a disability and is having a tough time, please reach out to the show via email, kindamurdery@gmail.com, or social media @kindamurdery. Also, if you like the show, please do follow and leave a review. Tell your friends and family to listen. It really helps. I'd like to take just a moment to acknowledge the horrible tragedy this week in Texas. I've been sick to my stomach with nausea off and on for the last 2 days every time it pops into my head. And as upset as I've been from over 1,000 miles away, the scope and weight of the grief in Texas right now I know is both crushing and incomprehensible. I've been in no mood to tell a murder story, but this is a true crime show called Kinda Murdery. It is what I do, and so I threw myself into researching this episode, and somehow, at least for me, and I'm not sure how to judge myself for this, I'll leave that to you, but focusing on the horror from over a century ago somehow felt comforting. Almost unreal in its remoteness, and the bizarre and strange events surrounding the killing almost comic in how surreal they were. And I found myself chuckling darkly as I read about this case. A case of horrific axe murders from 110 years ago and all the weirdness that spun out of them for decades afterwards. Now, not chuckling at the axe murders themselves, of course. They are tragic and senseless. But I found myself amused in regards to the deeply weird circus of behavior that the axe murders spawned. At one point I said to my wife, "Who needs a TV when you have old newspapers?" Now, I've mentioned on the show before that everyone has a different emotional journey when they process dark things in their lives. And humor, while it may not be understood by those who process differently, has always been a pressure release valve for me. But I respect that others will feel otherwise, which is why I often choose historical cases like today's from 1912, to put some distance between the rawness of what I'm feeling now and the reality of what happened then, and to dive into the fascinating twists and turns and, yes, occasional humor of truly strange, tragic stories, while taking a respite from the acute and very real grief that always accompanies murders. So, if you, like me, are able to find some emotional relief from the all-too-real tragedies of today by diving into the remote and unbelievable tragedies of the past, please join me on today's Kinda Murdery for a tale of the truly dark and bizarre. But if you're in no mood for murder, I absolutely respect and understand that, and now might be a good time to turn off the show. Today, I bring you a tale of Midwestern axe murder, allegedly for hire. It is a story of an entire family whose time in this world was tragically cut short. No pun intended. But for me, and hopefully for you, the truly compelling aspect of this mystery are all the events that unfolded because of the murders over the decades that followed. One last note. I enjoyed my time in Michigan so much last week that I've decided to stay there this week for a story that begins with a simple breaking and entering in the Motor City of Detroit in 1931. And then somewhat remarkably travels back to a mysterious and notorious Iowa axe murder in 1912. In fact, after today's episode, Kinda Murdery will be leaving the Emerald Triangle, or any particular location, and just be plain old Kinda Murdery, committed to delivering the best and most compelling tales of mayhem and murder no matter where they occur. So there's a little tease for the future. Back to today's story. The axe murders I'm referring to were known then as the Villisca axe murders, which led to the horrible deaths of the entire Moore family and 2 sisters from Missouri who were visiting. If you're wondering what I just said before axe murder, that's Villisca. It's a town in Iowa, spelled Villasicca. If I'm pronouncing that wrong, please let me know. But before I get into all that, let's say hello to our guest today. He's one of my favorites, and he's joined us before. And let me just say, while we always do have a great time together, we've also agreed to rein ourselves in just a bit. So for those of you who are here for a little more traditional true crime, I hope you'll have faith in that pledge. And for those of you who like your Kinda Murdery a little more on the rambunctious side, I know you'll be thrilled to find out that my good friend Niall Madden is back. Hey Niall, how you doing today?
Hey man, I'm doing good. How you doing?
Pretty solid, all things considered. Taking the preamble into account, yeah, pretty solid.
Yeah. You know what's worse than an axe murderer?
What's worse than an axe murderer?
What's scarier than an axe murderer? An axe body spray murderer.
Hey-oh, dad jokes.
He's just talking about crypto coins you never heard of.
Oh, that's funny. Speaking of axe body spray, you hear they got this new coyote repellent out there?
Yeah, I've got coyote problems.
Are you saying like some people that have been muling drugs or humans over the border are coming for you? Like, what do you mean by coyote problems?
Not border coyotes, but and I don't. Maybe I've never lived in a region before where this is a fact of life. But I just found out recently that the coyotes have been coming down from the hills and killing the cats in the neighborhood because this is what happens when there's a drought and they're hungry and thirsty. I don't know if they're drinking the blood.
Sounds like it, huh?
But they're killing people's cats and I guess small dogs. And this is crazy. I just saw a story the other day about a 2-year-old that was snatched from a Dallas porch by a hungry coyote.
No way.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
I know. So I'm just like stripping down at night, keeping a watchful eye, just prowling the neighborhood like I am Legend, ready to roundhouse one in the face if I see one.
Nice. Now, do you think they only eat the tame dogs, the domesticated dogs, or are they sometimes on a recruiting mission here?
There is the phenomenon when a domesticated dog joins a pack, like a feral pack.
Mm-hmm.
Within a matter of weeks, there's like some kind of a chemical reaction. It's like a scent, and their teeth enlarge and their the fur becomes far more coarse. It's the call of the wild.
Yeah, so you're basically telling me that a regular dog can werewolf out like Teen Wolf or something. It doesn't just happen to people. Dogs start running with wolves. Next thing you know, they're just like full-on transformation, paranormal creature style.
Yeah, one day you're going to find me. I'm going to be in the pack. I'm going to be on my hands and knees,
just
nude.
running naked through town.
Yeah, and you're going to be like, it's me, it's Zevon. and I, you know what I mean?
Just with
before I bite
these
you.
long fangs and just tons of body hair, you'll be vacuuming yourself with a shop vac to get the crumbs out.
Yeah.
Oh,
this
boy.
is my home. This is Harry and the Hendersons version of myself.
Nice. Well, it feels good to ease into this story a little bit with something a little more lighthearted, like domesticated dogs turning feral. Although, if you've listened to this show before, you've maybe heard the story of me being tormented by feral dogs in India. If you haven't, I tell it in my appearance on Middle-Aged and Creeped Out, which is in the feed and mentions feral dogs, and so go check that out. And with that, let's get into the story here. So on March 28th, 1931, a 48-year-old man named George Meyer, who's later discovered to actually be named Leroy Robinson, is arrested in Detroit, Michigan for breaking and entering and attempting to rob a millionaire's house in Grosse Point. I, of course, immediately thought of the John Cusack classic assassin movie Grosse Point Blank. Great film. Go watch it. So while Leroy Robinson, a.k.a. George Meyer, is in custody on the B&E, the police receive a mysterious letter with no return address and no signature, stating that George Meyer might have something, quote, interesting to share with them about Villisca. Authorities immediately know what the letter is referring to. The Villisca axe murders of 8 people, 6 members of the Moore family and 2 others, have remained unsolved for 19 years since that bloody night in Iowa in 1912. It's one of the country's most notorious unsolved crimes, and the possibility that they may have apprehended such a notorious killer sends the precinct into frenzy. They confront George Meyer, demanding to know if he is the famed Villisca axe murderer. And when they do confront him, he laughs. Not the laugh of an unrepentant monster, but rather the laugh of a man who suddenly feels a crushing weight removed from his shoulders and his soul. He says, "Yes, I'll tell you about it, and I am glad you asked, because maybe tonight I'll get my first decent night's sleep in 19 years. We're going to leave the Detroit interrogation room for a moment now and travel back to that Iowa night in 1912, a time when if someone had asked a Villiscan, someone who lived in Villisca, Iowa, the famous question from Field of Dreams, "Is this heaven?" instead of proudly replying, "No, it's Iowa," they likely would have replied, "No, it's hell." It was a cloudy night on June 9th, 1912 in hell, and dark. The moon was obscured. Indeed, if there is such a thing, it was a perfect night for murder. Joe Moore, owner of a farm equipment store, his wife and 4 children, 3 sons and a daughter, as well as 2 guests, the Stillinger girls, friends of Moore's daughter, whose father was a farmer from a town 2 miles away, had arranged to spend the night. They'd all gone to an evening church service together, and they were walking home. While they arrived home, Mrs. Moore made a quick supper, which the family and friends ate merrily, enjoying the food and each other's company until it was 9 p.m. and time for bed. And then the whole crew headed sleepily and happily up the stairs, blissfully unaware that in a dark bedroom closet, a horrible and brutally violent death was already lurking in ravenous anticipation of an unnatural appetite soon to be sated. On that cliffhanger, before we delve deeper into the horrible, I gotta tell you guys something. You know, whenever I research for the show, no matter how many times I'm looking, this always gets reconfirmed. You see, I'm always surprised and appalled by just how murdery people actually are. They aren't kinda murdery, they're full-blown murdery. And you know, Niall, if you're like me, I'm sure you'd agree.
Yes, people are terrible. I'm like, I don't agree with you, actually.
Look, before this story, honestly, I thought axe murders didn't really happen. Or if they did, they'd be exceedingly rare. You know, like from a horror movie that Jason or Michael Myers might do. You know, running around axe murdering people. Not like a murder method for regular folks. You know, from all over America, just running around axe murdering people. That was my assumption.
My favorite axe murderer is Patrick Bateman in American Psycho.
He is very stylish about it.
Dancing to Huey Lewis in the News.
Yeah.
It's hip to be square. Remember, he's attacking Jared Leto in his living room.
Yeah.
Wearing a raincoat slicker.
Yeah. That's some smart planning on his part. Awful thing he's doing there, but smart planning. So if you'll remember, the family currently in our 1912 story is heading upstairs to their doom. Now they're named the Moores. And the guy who was apprehended in Detroit, who I was talking about at the start, his name's George Myers. So you would think that if axe murders are rare, that while researching this story, if I searched for Myers Moore axe murder in Iowa between the years of 1931 and 1940, I'm going to find articles about this axe murder, right? And probably just this one. And if you're thinking, well, yeah, but the murder happened in 1912, I'll let you in on a little research secret here. Sometimes I look a few decades forward because often by then somebody retells the story and a good amount of perspective and all the facts have arrived in one place. So I did a search between 31 when Myers was captured and 40 for Myers Moore axe murder, thinking this is going to be spot on the nose for my story. And what pops up but a completely different axe murder, this time in Indiana in 1937. Now, are you familiar with John Philip Sousa? Do you know who that is?
Why don't you tell me?
Yeah, he's like the Mozart of marching band music. Like, so if you've ever heard just high school band marching band music, the sort of martial, pompous sounding marching band music, John Philip Sousa basically composed all of the greatest original marching band standards. So
wow.
Super big deal if you're into marching band music, which I know you are.
Yeah. I just thrash to it like it's heavy metal.
Nice. Twirling batons and throwing up the devil horns. Yes. So
yeah, I don't headbang. I just twirl batons so hard. I air twirl batons.
That's hilarious. All right. So 1937 in Indiana, there's a man named Jesse Nixon. He's 52 years old, and he was a clarinetist in John Philip Sousa's marching band. So, I mean, if you're into marching band music, this guy's essentially, the first chair clarinetist in Mozart's orchestra. Like, this is, you don't get any higher.
He's a top dog. Yeah. He's a big dog.
You don't get
in the marching band scene.
You don't get any bigger on the marching band scene than playing clarinet in John Philip Sousa's marching band. So how does this very successful middle-aged man decide to spend his time on Christmas Day? Well, by axe murdering his mother. Her body's found by the neighbor. And then when the police arrive at the door to question Jesse Nixon, 52, he shoots himself in the head. But it turns out he bungles the job and he doesn't die. So while he's in the hospital near death from the gunshot wound to the head, the police find a suicide note in the house that reveals two things. Number one, I've been planning to murder my mother for 4 years because each time I leave town with the JPS orchestra, she insists I come home again. And also, please no flowers or music at my funeral. The music around here is awful.
He was a music snob.
The balls on this hipster guy. Yeah, the clarinet player in a marching band is criticizing the music selection in his town.
You know what I think is really strange?
Yeah.
I can't even split a log with an axe. It's a lot. There's a lot of technique to it. The fact that he was so skilled, with an axe, he could murder his mother, but he couldn't use a gun to kill himself.
That's a great point.
He was unsuccessful.
I mean, you shoot yourself with a gun and you fail, but you murder mom with an axe and succeed? Like, why use the axe and not the gun, right? And also, why murder your mother for asking you to come home? You're 52 years old. Just don't come home if you don't want to come home. Like, come on, Norman Bates of the clarinet. Like, what the hell? Like, it doesn't seem like murdering mom is your only option here.
Mother, I want to ask you a question.
Jiminy.
Joking.
All right.
No, that's crazy.
Yeah. Okay, we've had our recess, and it's back to the terrible story again. Back to the murder of the Moore family and friends. So you'll remember where I left you. They're heading up the stairs to bed, unaware that an axe murderer is lurking in the closet. So on this particular night, in this particular family, if one of the kids said, "Mommy" or "Daddy, I think there's a monster in my closet," they would have been correct. Something to remember for all of us. So Joe and his wife put the children to bed, and they put out their kerosene lamps because it's 1912, and they went to sleep. Around midnight, the murderer emerges from the closet, armed with an axe that he's taken from Joe Moore's woodshed. He swings the axe and cleaves Moore's skull. One swing and then two, killing the man before he can even wake. Mrs. Moore sits bolt upright in bed. The killer swings the axe again, splitting Mrs. Moore's face in two from chin to forehead. Then he did a strange thing. He removed the soggy, blood-soaked sheets from the bed, and he strung them up over the already shaded windows. Then he took the murdered woman's petticoats and hung them over the mirror, as though he wanted to make doubly sure he wasn't observed, not even by himself. Next, he lights a kerosene lamp, and axe in one hand, lamp in the other, he creeps into the children's bedrooms.
They were still asleep?
Yes, apparently the children were still asleep. I will say that in my experience, young children, once they are fast asleep, can sleep through a freight train.
You can murder people.
Yeah, you're saying. So look, on that note, I'm going to spare you the grisly details of the child murders, but he killed them all. He axe murdered all of them, 4 more children and the 2 friends.
You got to do a spoiler alert before you.
Yeah, spoiler alert. He killed them all. The oldest child killed that night was 16, and the youngest was 4. Tragic, awful stuff. All the while, the town of Villisca slept. No one in town knew anything was amiss until Ed Selly, a clerk at the Moore's equipment store, thought it strange when his boss didn't show up for work at 7:30 the next morning. Now,
sounds like everybody can sleep so well in this town.
Yeah, well,
I'm jealous.
I guess it's a peaceful town, right? Seriously, though. No werewolf coyotes running around howling at the moon or something.
I just literally stare at the backs of my eyelids and wait until the next day starts.
Like Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris doesn't sleep, he waits.
Yeah.
All right. 6 months later, from the night of this murder, in December of the same year, 1912, and this is a strange coincidence if it is that, a Mrs. Joseph Moore. Now remember that it was Joseph Moore and his family who was killed that night in Villisca 6 months earlier. So 6 months later, a Mrs. Joseph Moore, 61 years old, and her mother, Mary Wilson, 82, who lived in Columbia, Missouri, were axe murdered in their home and discovered by Mrs. Moore's son, Lee, who is arrested and proclaims his innocence. Now, what does this axe murder case have to do with the other one? Maybe nothing, maybe everything. We'll get to that later. Now, again, I can't believe how commonplace axe murders are. They're dispersed throughout our nation's history as generously as the gray hairs on my freaking head. You know, I grew up in the middle of the woods off the power grid with all wood heating and wood cooking. So to echo Niall a little bit here, I've chopped a lot of wood, and an axe would not be my first choice as a murder weapon.
Have you heard of these new axe throwing bars?
I saw like a plastic axe throwing machine at a Dave & Buster's, but no, tell me about the bars.
Where do I start? It's basically the type of a place that attracts guys who want to become beard influencers, you know? The type of guy who thinks that having a beard is a central force of his existence.
Oh, that's funny.
And, but if you just think about it, there is absolutely nothing sensible about an axe throwing bar. No part of that sounds like a recipe for a good time. But
like, let's all go get drunk and throw edged weapons around.
Right. I don't even know how they get insurance for it or clearance. I don't know how the cops allow this to happen.
It's true. They won't insure a merry-go-round at a school, let alone like an axe throwing liquor pit. Like,
yeah. But for whatever reason, it's just striking a chord in the cultural zeitgeist. I think there's like this intoxicating allure for people who don't know any better, and like a fantasy or an expectation of what an axe throwing bar is like. What walking into a room full of these artisanal hipsters with TikTok hair and craft-scented beard butter.
There's a romanticism about the traditional manly physical pursuits that nobody does anymore because we're all stuck in cubicles all day, right? I mean, I think, is that kind of where you're going?
But it's just this obnoxious cultural movement. You got this. You're literally looking at guys discussing ways to improve their pipe craft. You know, smoking on a vintage pipe.
Right.
I mean, or like restoring leather because they think it looks sexy to to women. But the reality of the inside of an axe throwing bar is it's basically just guys who look like the dwarf from Lord of the Rings.
Gimli.
Yeah. And with this axe, I will protect my virginity. Maybe there's like one Ted Cruz lookalike slouching in the corner, soaking up the scene,
complaining about how he doesn't understand why Pete Davidson gets hot women.
That's great. Yeah. So you're walking through a crowd of basically the least coordinated guys on the planet, and they're all attempting to simultaneously dodge their own axe as it bounces off the wall and hurtles itself back at their face.
An edged boomerang throwing bar.
Right.
That's
Of course that's going to happen. You know what I mean? Like axe throwing it's not easy.
Right. It's got to be harder than knife throwing, which is already so difficult, let me tell you.
Right. And this is, it's just like the stench of IPAs hits you like you just got sprayed in the face by a feral cat because like these are also the same guys who will love talking about hops when they drink their rat poison beer. They're just talking about the hops. So many hops.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. So but bottom line is this axe throwing bar is, I don't get it.
Yeah.
I think it's going to go the way of the dodo bird in no time.
I think there's such a lack of traditional male virility and activities in the general populace, at least in parts of our country these days, that's what it is. It's a substitute for working on an oil rig or working on the railroad or whatever you thought you should be doing, like with Paul Bunyan when you were growing up. And now instead you're a forensic accountant for a tech firm. And the only way you can feel better about that is by combing your beard, customizing your Gandalf-style tobacco pipe, and then going out into public and chucking axes at a target. I mean...
Yeah, like going out in public, just going to a coffee shop with a rotary typewriter, acting like this is normal.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just, it's bizarre. It's this bizarre Edwardian LARPing.
Yeah, right. Exactly. LARPing, for anyone who's not familiar, would be live action role play. And my favorite thing about these absurd and hilarious hipster pursuits is that if you ask a hipster about one of these silly things that they're doing, rather than just, saying, yeah, I do this because I love it, it's my passion, very often they'll try to play it off. Like you mentioned bringing a, metal traditional typewriter to the coffee shop. If you're like, dude, why don't you just carry your 3-pound laptop instead of that 35-pound typewriter? They might actually say something like, well, man, I'm working my delts and my tris and my biceps on the walk here, as though they're the dude in the headband with the shake weight running by the coffee shop, like there actually is a useful reason that the rest of us can relate to.
My experience is most of them feign an ignorance that they're doing something strange, like you don't churn your own butter.
That's
what I didn't know that was possible.
What I've always found funny too is the absolute care put into curating an identity through appearance that results in you looking exactly like everyone else who does the same thing.
Yeah. They all want the Stalin haircut.
Oh my God.
Now, Stalin had great hair. He had TikTok hair before TikTok existed.
So Joseph Stalin mentioned seems like a good segue to get back into talking about an awful murderer. So let's return for a moment to 1931, Detroit jail cell, and George Myers, a.k.a. Leroy Robinson's confession. He claims that in the first week of June, he met a mysterious stranger in a bar in Kansas City. And that stranger tells George Myers that he wants to have Moore killed because Moore had an affair with the stranger's wife. Myers says, well, you want a man killed? I'll do it if the price is right. And the stranger offers him $3,000, $2,000 up front and $1,000 more when the job is done. And that's damn near an inflation-adjusted $100,000. And he says, all right, I'm your man. I'm your murdery guy. That's his story of the instigation of the murder. Then Myers says that he met up with the mysterious stranger in Villisca on the evening of June 9th. And the stranger pays the first installment, the $2,000, and tells him he'll get the other $1,000 upon completion. And then Myers says he snuck off to Moore's house with the axe hidden under his coat. Now, the police believe they've finally caught the axe murderer, but they need to be sure. They need to be sure that he's not just a wacko claiming to be an axe murderer, so they question him intensively for 2 days. And when I hear question intensively, I imagine they're shining the light in his face, they're beating him with rubber hoses, they're doing the phone book thing, the whole deal. But with that picture in your mind of Myers getting beaten with rubber hoses in jail in Detroit, let's pause for a second.
He's getting beaten by a bunch of juggalos.
It is Detroit after all. It's Eminem's great-grandfather in there in a clown suit.
Whoop. What's the juggalo called? Whoop, whoop.
I'm unfamiliar with juggalo culture.
You don't know the family?
No, anybody, if you're listening and you know all about juggalos or you love juggalos, please email kindamurdery@gmail.com and give me a download on juggalos.
Yeah, a download that, and also how I can become one.
Yeah.
An invite.
Right. How do you get jumped into the juggalo gang?
Yeah.
We're pausing here because remember, it's 1931. We've been talking about a murder that happened in 1912, 19 years ago. So presumably, and if you presumed it, you'd be correct, there's been some police work and some suspects before now. So let's pause here and talk about some of the suspects who were either indicted or tried for the Villisca murders before Moore, aka Leroy Robinson's confession. Back in 1912, there are no leads initially, and a detective from the Burns agency named J.N. Wilkerson is hired by friends and family of the Moores. One thing I've learned doing this show that you may not realize if you watch popular culture stuff featuring Sherlock Holmes and Pinkertons and all kinds of private detectives back in the day is that a lot of these guys were just pretty hideous Ryan O'Neal style paper moon con men, meaning that they were feeding like vampires on people's grief. A horrible tragedy would happen, and a private detective would show up, go to the loved ones of the victims and offer to solve the case, and basically just start collecting giant paychecks. And if he didn't get easy results, start making them up. And that's pretty much what happened here. Wilkerson comes in and he immediately tries to pin the crime on State Senator F.F. Jones, specifically that F.F. Jones is the mysterious stranger, the one who hired the killer. Ultimately, the senator sues 9 different people for slander. The case is dropped against 8 of them, but not dropped against J.N. Wilkerson, Burns Detective Agency. However, also very strangely, Wilkerson wins the slander case, and yet the state senator is never charged with the murder. So I'm not exactly sure how Wilkerson could win the slander case and the state senator could be found to have nothing to do with the killing, but I guess it was 1912. Again, Wilkerson's more concerned with collecting checks than he is with actually solving the crime. So next he finds a guy named Blackie Mansfield, and he runs him in along with 3 unknown people who were never brought to court and 2 local business owners in Villisca. And he says, this is it. This is the secret cabal of conspiratorial murder planners headed up by Blackie Mansfield. These are the guys that did the Moore murder. Well, no indictment. Again, Wilkerson's just full of it. So at this point, if you count them, Wilkerson's managed to get 7 different people brought before a grand jury and not an indictment on a single one of them. The next person we're going to talk about who was suspected of this crime was actually tried for it. Now, he first appears immediately after the murder back in June of 1912. He is an itinerant preacher who goes from town to town giving revival tent and street corner sermons. And he is arrested for the murder and claims he's innocent because he just arrived in town at 5 a.m. that morning, which they determine is after the family was killed. For some reason, nothing sticks to him either, and he is released. But this is not the last we'll hear of the itinerant reverend. The itinerant reverend's name is Lynn Kelly. The Reverend Lynn George Kelly. I was going to leave the George out because it gets confusing with so many Georges, but you do find that there were a lot of Georges in the 1800s. My hypothesis being because George Washington was so popular when their grandparents were making babies, and then it became a family name. But so Reverend Lynn George Kelly, who said he arrived at 5 a.m. that night and is released, 5 years later is arrested for being a pervert, basically. And here's the charges against Reverend Kelly. They say that he went from town to town and that he would hire girls to do stenography work for him, young women to be stenographers. And then once he got them into a room alone for some dictation, he would try to turn it into another kind of dictation, if you're picking up what I'm putting down.
Dick-taking.
Yep. So he gets arrested for being a pervert and attempting to take advantage of all kinds of young women against their will. And then he gets put in prison. And then once he's in prison, he gets accused of attempting to sexually assault various men in prison. So he's some kind of a pansexual predator, basically. And the upshot of all this perversion arrest is that while he's in there for being a pervert, they decide to try him for being the axe murderer. Now, I don't know how they connected those dots, but they did.
Did he smuggle a copy of The Pickup Artist into jail with him?
He's wearing whatever the 1912 version of the Cat in the hat is.
Yeah, the enormous oversized hat that Pamela Anderson would wear in the 90s.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So again, I marvel at, we've got this perv in jail now. He must be the axe murderer. I suppose that the dot that got connected there was the fact that he had appeared in town the night of the murders. But he somehow has the money to hire a really good lawyer, a guy who's a successful politician and an attorney, and he is also acquitted of the axe murder. Meanwhile, back in 1931 now, the police have started to discover holes in Leroy Robinson, a.k.a. George Myers' story. Now, I heard one immediately. The one I heard was when he said that he snuck off to the Moore's house with an axe hidden under his coat because they determined that the killer had killed the family with Joseph Moore's own axe. So already when he said, I met up with the stranger, I got my first installment of payment, and then I snuck off with an axe hidden under my coat, I thought that sounded a little fishy. The next thing that they discover that sounds a little fishy is that he claims to have essentially bludgeoned everyone to death with the blunt part of the axe. But they bring in good old con man Flint.
Meaning he doesn't take the easy way out.
Oh, God. Yeah. I don't know, maybe it's easier to kill someone with the blunt end.
It would absolutely would be easier for me.
So guess who they call in to check the veracity of this blunt part of the axe claim? They hunt down good old flim-flam man and guy who bilks all the life savings out of grieving friends and family. In other words, a real turd himself. That's right, Private Detective J.N. Wilkerson, 19 years later, is brought in to read Myers' confession. And he says, oh no, I saw it all at the time. They weren't killed with the blunt part of the axe, and he makes no mention of the horrible mutilations he performed upon the bodies. There's no way this is the guy. And then there's a third inconsistency in the story, and that third inconsistency is Myers, from the start, when confessing, said, I killed the Moores and I killed their 4 children, so I killed 6 people, but I did not kill the 2 young friends, the 2 girls that were there visiting that night. Now, and if you're trying to get people to believe you that you're an axe murderer and you're lying about it, I don't know why you would claim that you hadn't killed 2 of the axe murdered victims that were found on the scene. But that's what he does, and that makes them really not believe him. Now, in the meantime, while they've been vetting his story, Myers has had 2 different visitors to the prison. And these visitors must have brought, I don't know, a giant chocolate cake or something, because after the visits, they find on Myers a couple of small saws and a file. And what they determine was that he is planning, along with other prisoners, a jailbreak, and that the whole point of the mysterious letter, which they've now decided is written in the small, neat hand of obviously a woman. The point of that letter, they've decided, was written by a woman, and that it must be Myers' wife, and that in case the breakout from prison fails, he's hoping that by confessing to the axe murders, that he will get transported to Iowa for trial and that he can escape from the train on the journey. So the whole confessing to the axe murderers after the letter comes in is just a way for him to try to get out of jail after getting busted for attempting to burgle a millionaire's home in Grosse Point. What do you think of that?
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So that he goes from having a 113-year potential sentence for being an axe murderer to being given 15 years for burglaring a millionaire. But there's one last detail to this story that I want to return to. And this is the one that gave me some goosebumps. Remember I told you that 6 months after the Moore family was murdered in Missouri?
Yeah.
A woman and her elderly mother, a middle-aged woman and her elderly mother were axe murdered? Well, I'm not sure if you recall at this point, but the woman who was murdered was a Mrs. Joseph Moore. And the family that was murdered was the family of Joseph and Mrs. Joseph Moore and the children who were there that night. It makes me wonder if there wasn't, in fact, a mysterious stranger hiring criminals to kill a Joseph Moore, or maybe a Mrs. Joseph Moore, for whatever reason, infidelity, who knows, and that the entire Moore family was tragically murdered by mistake, like they got the wrong Mrs. Joseph Moore. The entire Moore family from Villisca, Iowa, was murdered by mistake. The case was never solved because there were no clues and no connection to anything because they should never have been killed. And that 6 months later, the killer, whoever he was, found the real or the correct Mrs. Joseph Moore and did the job he was hired to do in the first place. Wow.
Jesus.
So how you like them apples?
I don't like them apples.
Me neither.
Crab apples.
If that's really how it went down, it's super sad and unnecessary. You know, Niall, we just told an axe murder story, and after sitting in this chair for about an hour and my back's getting sore, I can't help but think that if you want to commit an axe murder and you don't want to hurt yourself doing it, you gotta be pretty limber. Me with my CP, I couldn't be an axe murderer. I definitely hurt my back.
You know, I hurt my back recently, a month and a half ago.
You did, but you're in such good shape, man. How'd you hurt your back?
That's the thing about back injuries. I wasn't even doing something cool.
What were you doing?
I was literally reaching behind the couch to turn off a lamp. And for the next month and a half, I've been walking like I have a stick up my ass.
I've been there, dude. I've been there.
It's awful. It's awful. It's really scary.
Yeah.
I was just like, hello, darkness, my old friend.
I've been there too, man, where you just like can't move and you're having back spasms and it's horrific. You're like screaming in the night like someone going through a transformation. Yeah.
Well, that's the weirdest part. Like you're completely fast asleep. You twitch, you make a micro movement in your sleep and you wake up feeling like you're being murdered.
Yeah.
It's like a chain reaction. It just keeps spreading.
Right.
So
now I'm thinking of the classic 90s movie Chain Reaction, starring Morgan Freeman and like Keanu Reeves or something, I think. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Yeah, well, so I decided to start doing Bikram yoga.
Is this yoga invented by a guy named Bikram? What is Bikram yoga for our listeners who may not be familiar?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole scandal behind the guy who created it, or whatever. But I was trying to find something that would be low impact and stretching and sort of, I'm like, this will be a lifestyle change. So it's basically like an hour and a half of this heated room.
Oh, so it's hot yoga. I've heard of that. Okay, hot yoga. Got it.
Yeah, you're doing the same 26 poses each time.
One for each letter of the alphabet. I mean, like Sesame
Well, look,
Street.
it sounds very easy, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I run hot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Every time I lay down to sleep, I'm thrashing.
Me too.
Like I'm listening to heavy metal.
Yeah.
I'm just always too hot. So I'll just tell you the experience of this class. The first class, I'm fairly certain I had a near-death experience halfway through it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say I was a hot pocket in a microwave, being blasted with high-powered radiation, just being cooked from the inside out. I could literally hear like the hum of the neon lights above me. And you're doing this delicate dance, you know, that fine line when you have to cook the fine line you have to walk when you're cooking a Hot Pocket.
Between
if you
tasty
push it too
and
far,
lava, yeah.
If you push it too far and heat it for too long, the Hot Pocket explodes. And yes, you get like the volcanic eruption where the crust bursts and the layers of cheesy lava streams out.
Jiminy Christmas.
But at the same time, it is a fact, if you play it too safe, if you're too cautious, and you don't give it enough juice, the result is even worse. It's a disaster.
Oh my gosh, you could be talking about any number of things besides nuking a Hot Pocket right now, and they're all pretty hilarious, but we'll leave that to the imagination of the listeners. Continue.
So if you do not push it hard enough, you bite into a cold patch of the Hot Pocket, and you are not only having a terrible meal, you're instantly filled with disgust for yourself and the state of your life. It suddenly becomes a metaphor for so much more.
Like you're in that moment confronted with the fact that your dinner is a Hot Pocket, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yes.
Right.
So this is a delicate dance. And the Bikram yoga class is very similar to that. I'm still not sure if I love it or if I hate it so much that I just love that I'm not inside it the second it's over.
So let's just describe it. Describe what's it look like in there? What's it feel like in there? Who's in there with you? Like, let's set the scene for us.
Honestly, there's a bunch of like women. I'm looking around, I'm like, oh man, I'm going to mop the floor with these people. And I'm literally slipping and sliding on my own sweat. Everybody's supposed to be staring at themselves in the mirror. And I feel terrible because they're trying to focus, and the next thing you know, there's just like a body that flies into frame. It's just me.
You're on a slip and slide with giant saddlebags of flop sweat just soaking your shirt. Like,
yeah, people literally lose their balance because I'm behind them, distracting them, just thrashing around. And honestly, I'm just in there going full throttle now, man. By the end of the class, I look like that single hot dog on the rollers at 7-Eleven. The same one that's been spinning since the new manager took over 18 months prior. It will never be purchased.
God.
It's just,
it
looks rubber.
It looks like an old lady's legs by the pool in Palm Springs. That's what we're talking about.
That's exactly it. So that's what I look like when I get out of this class. And it's you're just like casually, you're just like very slowly driving through red lights because you have heat stroke.
Yeah.
And you're senile, but it's been great. I love it.
So,
or maybe I hate it.
Is everybody else disgustingly sweaty, or is it just you?
Everybody is. Everybody is.
Because I picture like a martial arts mat, that sort of slick rubber. Is that what's going on? I mean, is everybody just like wading around in a pool of human sweat?
That sort of like padded martial arts mat floor would be perfect. We're actually on a wooden floor, so everything just hurts my feet and everything. But you have like your own little yoga mat.
Yeah.
And there's guys in there they look like they're wearing women's panties. Because it is so insanely hot. After about 10 minutes, you're just like, I'm breathing like.
To me, it sounds like an utter nightmare. Like
Yeah, I literally feel like a dog trapped in a car with the windows up in a heat wave.
Yeah, I just feel like I'd be afraid some people, probably myself, would just smell so bad that I would vomit, and then there'd be a chain reaction and like Stand By Me. Like,
no, you could just taste blood. It's weird. You don't smell like BO afterwards. I guess it's because it's just all water.
Because everyone's been wading around in all the toxins that you've sweated out.
Yeah, I'm just spraying the walls.
Like a fire hose.
Yeah. I actually got, in the first week, I got like a blepharitis eyelid infection.
Is that like pink eye or something?
It's like a sty. It's like a sty or something. But my two eyelids, just like, they look like they went inside out. They were like so swollen. So I got to get a rag so I can wipe my eyes. But it was just, it's just from sweating into my own eyes.
On that note, anybody out there who either runs or knows someone who runs a Bikram hot yoga studio, if you'd like to sponsor Kinda Murdery, reach out to us at kindamurdery.com. kindamurdery@gmail.com.
You got to do it, man. I love it.
Oh, boy.
I'm going to join the cult.
Oh, man. Wow, now this has been an absolute blast. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks, man. I had a lot of fun.
I never, ever, ever want to do hot yoga, but I hope it's helping your back.
It's helping my back. It's helping my mind.
All right, that's great. And with that, for Niall Madden, I'm Zevon Odelberg, and this has been Kinda Murdery.
Kinda Murdery, The Emerald Triangle, is created, researched, edited, produced, and hosted by Zevon Odelberg, with opening theme by Niall Madden and art by the Gin of Lang. Available now on all podcasting platforms. If you like the show, please subscribe, review, and tell your friends. You can find us on social media at Kinda Murdery or email at kindamurdery@gmail.com.